The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. The Complete Journey. Part 1. The Unseen Frontier. What if the most significant exploration in human history wasn't the scaling of a mountain or the landing on a moon, but the quiet, deliberate crossing of an inner frontier? A frontier that separates the world of effects from the world of causes, the reality of limitation from the truth of boundless potential. There exists an account so extraordinary it has lingered for a century in the half-light between legend and testimony that claims such a crossing was not only possible but was meticulously documented. It begins not with a mystic's prayer, but with a scientist's compass, pointing east. In the closing years of the 19th century, an era gripped by the tangible triumphs of steam and steel, a most unusual expedition was conceived. Its members were not treasure hunters or colonial surveyors, but American men of reason, geologists, physicists, a physician. Their stated aim was conventional, but their destined path was anything but. They were drawn, almost against their own pragmatic wills, into the high, silent valleys of the Himalayas, seeking not artifacts, but answers. They carried with them the heavy tools of empirical measurement, little knowing they would need an entirely different instrument, the unshielded human consciousness, to perceive what awaited them. The journey outward mirrored the journey inward. The familiar landscapes of the West gave way to the vibrant, chaotic tapestry of India, and finally to the colossal, breathing silence of the mountains. With every mile, the certainties of their training began to soften at the edges. They heard whispers in village tea-houses, stories not of gods in temples, but of men in remote hermitages who commanded the weather, who conversed across distances without wires, whose bodies knew not age or decay. These were not described as miracles, but as disciplines. A deep, unsettling curiosity took root. What if these were not fables, but field reports from the farthest reaches of human development? The air itself seemed to thin, not just of oxygen, but of the dense assumptions that govern ordinary life. The world was becoming porous, hinting at a subtler architecture behind the stone and sky. Then the first concrete, inexplicable event occurred. A guide they had never met appeared at a crucial fork in a treacherous pass, knowing their names and their need. He offered direction with a calm finality, and when they turned to thank him, he was simply gone. Not vanished into the mist, but absent, as if the space he occupied had folded back into itself. The scientists looked at their maps, then at each other. Logic stammered. Their expedition log now had its first entry that defied all columns for data. The frontier of the unseen had been breached, and it was inviting them in. The encounter. When it finally came, it was devoid of theatricality. There was no blinding light, no celestial fanfare. This in itself was the first profound lesson. The master awaited them on a simple stone veranda overlooking an endless sea of peaks. He was not the ancient, wizened sage of storybooks, but a man who appeared to be in the very prime of life, radiating a vitality so potent it was almost physical. His eyes held not the distant gaze of a dreamer, but the focused, penetrating clarity of one who sees the very fabric of the world as it is, fluid, intelligent, and utterly responsive. He introduced himself, and his name was less important than the quality of presence that accompanied it, a deep, humming stillness that seemed to slow the very rhythm of their hearts. Their Western minds, trained to dissect and doubt, scrambled for a methodology. They observed his simple robes, the lack of any shrine or symbol, the ordinary cup of tea beside him. They sought the secret in his surroundings, but the secret was the surroundings, and him within it, inseparable. He welcomed them not as disciples, but as fellow scientists who had simply been studying a narrower band of reality's spectrum. He said, "You have measured the shadows cast by the flame, and you have built a magnificent world from those shadows. Now you are ready to perceive the flame itself." The conversation that followed dismantled, piece by gentle piece, their understanding of natural law. He began with the fundamental ground of being, energy, not as an abstract scientific concept, but as the palpable, living substance of all form. He said, "This mountain, your body, the air between us are but harmonies in a grand symphony of vibration, temporary agreements in a field of infinite possibility." To illustrate, he asked for a specific object. One of the men thought, privately, of his lost childhood penknife, a distinct memory tied to no physical place in these mountains. The master simply smiled, held out his hand, and there, resting on his palm, was the knife. Not an approximation, but the very object, cool and real. The shock was not in the appearance, but in the utter casualness of it. It was as natural to him as breathing was to them. The law he demonstrated was not suspension of physics, but its mastery, a conscious, deliberate conversation with the vibrational essence of all things. The lesson was immediate and visceral. Reality was not fixed, it was a consensus, a habit of perception, and those habits could be changed by a disciplined mind operating from a deeper level of causation. The master explained that what they called matter was merely energy vibrating at a rate so slow it appeared solid to senses attuned to that same slowness. His consciousness, however, operated from a higher, finer vibrational state, allowing him to interact with the blueprint of form directly, to invite it into manifestation. He was not breaking rules, he was operating by the truer, older rules that underlie the temporary ones. The scientists' instruments were useless here, for they were designed to measure the shadow world, not the light that cast it. The only instrument capable of that measurement was their own awakened awareness, and it was being recalibrated in real time. Part 3. The Nature of the Self. In the days that followed, the initial shock of phenomenon gave way to a deeper, more unsettling revolution, the reconstruction of the self. The master, whom they came to know as Emil, patiently turned their inquiry inward. The real frontier, he implied, was not the Himalayan range, but the invisible boundary they each carried within, the firm belief that they were isolated beings, housed in fragile, temporary flesh. One evening, as the sun painted the snows in hues of rose and gold, he addressed this core illusion. He said, "You speak of your body as a possession. You say, 'my hand, my heart,' as if you are a ghost piloting a machine. This is the primal error. You are the body, and the body is you, for both are manifestations of a single, indivisible consciousness. The separation is the dream." He then spoke of the immortal body, not as a religious promise for an afterlife, but as a present, attainable fact of spiritual science. Decay and aging, he explained, were not laws of nature, but laws of a specific conflicted state of consciousness. They were the physiological echo of a mind that believes in separation, scarcity, and inevitable conclusion. Death is an absurdity, he stated with a calm that carried no arrogance, only the plain weight of fact. What you witness as death is merely a shift in focus, a relinquishment of one pattern of energy because the consciousness sustaining it has become entranced by the idea of an end. The true radiant body, the Vajra or diamond body of Eastern tradition, was waiting beneath the accumulated layers of fear and misidentification, eternal and self-sustaining. This led to the most profound teaching of all, the concept of the I Am presence. Emile was careful to distinguish this from the petty biographical I, the collection of memories, preferences, and social roles. That, he said, was merely a character in a play. The true I Am was the awareness watching the play, the silent, eternal witness that had no history and no limit. It was the spark of the absolute, individualized.
When your scriptures say, "I and the Father are one," he explained, it is not a statement of chosen divinity. It is a statement of fundamental scientific identity. The Father is the unmanifest source, the field of pure potential. The I is a focal point of that source. To know this, to feel this as the core of your being, is to unlock the door to every so-called miracle, for you are then operating from the causal realm, not the realm of effects. He demonstrated this by having them perform a simple exercise. He asked them to sit, close their eyes, and to silently repeat the phrase, "I am," not as words describing themselves, but as a direct declaration of existence itself, to feel it as the foundational truth prior to any thought or attribute. As they did, a palpable shift occurred in the atmosphere. A warmth, a vibrational hum seemed to emanate from the group itself. One of the scientists later wrote that for a fleeting moment the boundaries of his skin dissolved. He felt not like a man sitting on the ground, but as a center of awareness within a vast living universe, intimately connected to the stone, the air, and the others around him. It was a glimpse, fleeting but unforgettable, of the Master's perpetual state of being. The power, they realized, was not in manipulating external energy, but in fully inhabiting this internal identity. The miracle was not in the manifestation of an object, but in the transformation of the one who perceives. Part 4. The Living Realm. Their journey soon carried them beyond the hermitage of a single teacher and into the heart of a living community, a revelation that proved as transformative as any philosophical discourse. This was no isolated ascetics retreat, but a vibrant, functioning village nestled in a hidden valley. Here, the principles they had glimpsed were not reserved for adepts. They were the very fabric of society, the practical foundation upon which daily life was built. Children played games that involved sensing and shaping subtle energy fields. Structures were raised not with the groan of pulleys and the shout of labor, but through a focused collective intent that guided stone and timber into place with an elegant, almost musical precision. The air carried not the scent of industry, but the fragrance of blossoms and a profound, resonant peace. This was the ultimate demystification of the miraculous. The masters were not supernatural anomalies. They were pioneers of a higher human norm. Their abilities were the natural flowering of a consciousness that had fully aligned itself with what Emile called the constructive principle of the universe, the innate intelligence within energy that tends toward harmony, healing, and perfect order. Sickness, they were shown, was treated not as an invading enemy to be fought, but as a dissonant rhythm within the body's energy field. A healer would simply rest their hands near the afflicted area, their consciousness still and laser-focused, listening to the aberrant pattern and then holding the vision of perfect function. Like a tuning fork bringing a discordant string back into harmony, the body's own intelligence would follow follow this clear template, and healing would occur, often within moments. The scientists witnessed what could only be called telepathic communication, though the villagers had no such clinical term for it. A man tending a garden would pause, look toward the hills, and simply know his child had stumbled and scraped a knee miles away. A decision about communal resources would be reached without a meeting, as a shared understanding emerged simultaneously in multiple minds. This was not mind reading, it was mind meeting in a shared field of awareness. The illusion of the skull as an impermeable barrier was completely absent here. They operated from an understanding of a unified mental atmosphere, where individual consciousnesses were like currents in a single ocean, distinct but never separate. Information flowed as naturally as water finding its level. Perhaps most staggering was the evidence of timelessness. They met individuals who, by their own accounts and the village's oral history, were hundreds of years old. Yet their eyes were clear, their movements supple, their vitality undimmed. There was no secret elixir, no magical fountain. The explanation was once again vibrational. By maintaining a consciousness anchored in the eternal I Am, free from the corrosive narratives of fear, regret, and inevitable decline, their physical form was sustained by a higher frequency energy. The body, in faithful reflection, ceased to obey the lower world's script of entropy. It was a living demonstration that aging is a story the body believes when the mind tells it incessantly enough. In this valley, the mind told a different, older story, one of continuity, renewal, and inseparable connection to an ageless source. Part 5. The Synthesis of Law. Leaving the valley was a departure not just from a place, but from a paradigm. The scientists carried back with them no sacred relics, no inscribed tablets. Their treasure was a recalibrated consciousness, a set of living keys that fit the locks of a hidden architecture within and behind the visible world. As they made the long journey homeward, the mountains at their backs, their task shifted from observation to synthesis. They began to weave together the disparate threads of their own Western knowledge with the golden cords of this Eastern wisdom, discovering not contradiction, but completion. The laws demonstrated by the masters were not new. They were the foundational principles upon which all reality is structured, simply perceived from a higher vantage point and applied with deliberate mastery. They recognized the principle of vibration from the Kybalion, the Hermetic axiom that nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. In the West, it was a philosophical concept. In the Himalayas, it was the daily bread of existence. The masters had simply learned to consciously modulate their own vibration through the I Am presence, through purified thought and emotion, to resonate with the outcomes they desired, whether that was the vibrational pattern of health, of a material object, or of translucency to gravity itself. The mentalism of the Kybalion, the idea that the all is mind, the universe is mental, was not a metaphor in that high valley. It was the observable fact that a disciplined, unified mind could restructure the vibrational field that precipitates as matter. The map and the territory were finally aligning. The Gnostic spark, the divine pneuma trapped in the material world, found its resolution here. The masters were not trapped. They had dissolved the illusion of the trap itself by realizing their essential nature was never in the material world to begin with. Rather, the material world emerged from their consciousness, and they could interact with it as a composer with a symphony, not a prisoner with a cell. The concept of the demiurge, the blind architect of a flawed reality, was understood not as an external entity, but as the personification of the unawakened egoic mind, projecting its own limitations onto the cosmos. The masters had stilled that lower mind, and in the silence they perceived the flawless intelligent design of the one mind directly, learning to cooperate with its constructive flow. Even the stark prophecies of the Book of Enoch and the complex cosmologies of the Audiobook took on a new practical light. The wars in heaven, the falls of consciousness into denser realms, the elaborate histories of planetary evolution, these could be seen as grand mythological narratives describing the very journey of consciousness the masters had reversed. They had ascended the densities not by escaping the world, but by refining the instrument of perception within it. Their village was a glimpse of a Salvington, or a higher vibrational community operating on Earth, a node of a broader cosmic civilization functioning in harmony with universal law. The teachings were not about escape, but about sovereignty, the reclamation of one's rightful state as a conscious co-creator within a living, intelligent, and fundamentally friendly universe.
Part 6. The Bridge Within. So, what do we do with this account? Do we place it on the shelf of fascinating anomalies, a tale to ponder on a quiet evening? Or do we allow it to perform its intended surgery, to cut gently but decisively at the very roots of our own disbelief? The true power of this narrative is not that it happened there and then to them. Its power is its implicit, thunderous question: what if it is a mirror held up to human potential itself? The masters were not a different species. They presented themselves as mere men and women who had chosen to remember, to practice, and to embody a set of laws accessible to all. The expedition's outward journey is, therefore, a perfect metaphor for our own inward trek. The treacherous passes they navigated are our own ingrained habits of thought. The high, thin air of the peaks is the rarefied clarity of a mind freed from the heavy fog of doubt and limitation. The first, most practical step across this bridge is the conscious reclamation of the I Am. This is not a complex meditation technique reserved for hours of silent sitting. It is a moment-to-moment remembering. Before you are a parent, a professional, a person with a history, you simply are. In the traffic jam, in the line at the store, in the moment of anxiety or frustration, you can drop beneath the story. A silent, internal declaration, not as words, but as a felt sense: I am. This is not affirming an ego, it is touching the bedrock of your existence, the silent witness behind the turmoil. It is aligning, however briefly, with the master's primary point of orientation. From that anchored place, your reactions to the world begin to change, because you are no longer solely the character in the drama. You are also the aware space in which the drama unfolds. The second step is to begin seeing the world as they did, as a field of intelligent, malleable energy. Look at a solid object, a table, a stone. Instead of seeing its finality, try to perceive it as a temporary consensus of atoms dancing in vast emptiness, held in form by a vibratory pattern. Look at an illness or a difficult circumstance not as a fixed, hostile reality, but as a denser, more stubborn pattern of energy. Your task is not to fight the pattern with brute force from the same level of consciousness that created it, but to introduce a new, higher frequency pattern. This is the essence of their healing and of their materializations. It is the application of the Hermetic principle of correspondence. Quote, as above, so below, as within, so without.
hold the clear, calm, detailed mental emotional vibration of the desired outcome, health, peace, resolution, and you become a tuning fork, broadcasting that frequency into the field, inviting reality to resonate in harmony with it. This is where the journey transforms from a historical curiosity into a living experiment. You are the expedition now. Your daily life is the Himalayan landscape. Your challenges are the treacherous passes that test your resolve to operate from the I am, or to fall back into the old, reactive self. Each moment of choosing presence over panic, unity over separation, constructive vision over criticism is a step deeper into that hidden valley within yourself. You may not materialize a penknife tomorrow, but you might materialize a profound sense of peace where there was anxiety. You might heal a relationship by shifting the energy you bring to it. You might, through sustained practice, find your own body responding with greater vitality as you release the ancient whispered story of decline. The miracles start small, not as spectacle, but as a subtle, undeniable shift in the texture of your reality. Part 7. Mastery of the Inner Climate. The Masters revealed that the external world is a faithful, if delayed, echo of our inner climate. The thoughts we habitually think and the emotions we consistently entertain are not private, fleeting events. They are the very architects of our personal reality, the sculptors of the energetic mold into which experience pours. They taught that undisciplined thought is like throwing random seeds onto the soil of consciousness. You cannot then be shocked by the chaotic, weedy garden that results. But a mind that has been brought into focus, that has learned to select its seeds with deliberate care, cultivates a life of intentional and breathtaking beauty. This is not positive thinking as a shallow mask, but vibrational agriculture as a spiritual science. Every resentment held is a knot tied in the flow of your own energy. Every chronic fear is a constant low-grade broadcast that attracts circumstances to justify its existence. The Masters had dissolved these inner adversaries, not through battle, but through understanding and transcendence. They perceived the angry or fearful thought as it arose, acknowledged it without judgment, but then refused to identify with it. They would return their attention to the still point of the I am, to the feeling of love or peace, and from that higher ground, the lower vibration would simply dissipate for lack of fuel. They compared it to watching a storm from the vantage of a high mountain. You see its turbulence, but you are not in it. Your perspective itself is the mastery. This work requires a ruthless and gentle honesty. It means catching yourself in the act of weaving a story of victimhood, of lack, of grievance, and consciously pausing. It means asking in that moment, from which self am I speaking? Is this the eternal I am, or is this the temporary, wounded character of my past? The shift may feel subtle at first, a mere crack in the old pattern, but with persistence, that crack widens into a doorway. You begin to experience gaps in the constant mental narration, moments of pure, silent being. In those gaps, something new can enter. An intuition, a creative solution, a wave of unconditional peace. These are the first fruits of inner sovereignty, the initial evidences that you are learning to command the weather within your own mind. The greatest obstacle, they cautioned, is not the complexity of the practice, but the inertia of the old identity. The ego, the constructed self, derives its sense of solidity from drama, struggle, and separation. It will protest this inner silence, this detachment from its stories as a form of death. The Master's path is to see this mechanism in action without condemnation. to thank the ego for its long-standing, misguided service, and to gently but firmly reaffirm your primary identity as the aware presence that watches it all. This is the true initiation, not a ceremony performed by others, but the daily private ritual of choosing the true self over the imagined one. Part 8. The expansive circle of being. As the inner climate stabilizes in peace and conscious intent, a profound expansion naturally occurs. The masters demonstrated that the awakened individual does not retreat into a cocoon of private bliss. Instead, the circle of their self-identification widens. The sense of I begins to gently include the well-being of others, the health of the community, and the harmony of the natural world. This is not altruism as a moral duty, but as the logical expression of a realized truth. In a unified field, to harm another is to introduce dissonance into a system of which you are an integral part. To heal and elevate another is to strengthen the whole and thus yourself. Their village was the living proof of this principle, a symbiotic organism where individual mastery fed collective thriving and collective harmony supported individual ascension. This expanded consciousness is what allows for what we might call true service, action that arises not from a sense of obligation or a desire for recognition, but as a spontaneous overflow of the love and abundance experienced within. The master heals because he perceives the other's pain as a distortion in a field he knows himself to be a part of. Restoring harmony is as natural and necessary as adjusting your own posture. He shares wisdom not to create followers, but because the light within him, by its very nature, illuminates. This is the essence of the bodhisattva ideal, or the Christed consciousness, a being who has earned the right to freedom but chooses to remain engaged as a conduit of grace, pulling others upward by the sheer gravitational force.
From this vantage, the ultimate goal of the path comes into focus. It is not merely personal salvation or a private ticket to paradise. It is the gradual, deliberate participation in the upliftment of the entire human experiment. The masters presented themselves as emissaries of a broader, invisible civilization of awakened beings who work with humanity not from above, but from within the fabric of consciousness itself. They are the elder brothers and sisters, the prototypes of what is possible. Their existence is an open invitation to graduate from a humanity driven by fear and separation to one orchestrated by love and conscious cooperation. A planet not of warring tribes, but of a diverse and sovereign humanity recognizing its fundamental unity. This vision is the practical cosmic payoff of all the inner work. Your disciplined mind, your heart cleared of resentment, your identification with the I Am become more than tools for personal peace. They become cells in the awakening body of a new humanity. Every time you choose understanding over anger, generosity over scarcity, truth over illusion, you are not just improving your own life, you are broadcasting a coherent, high-frequency signal into the collective mental atmosphere. You are adding your note to a new harmonic, making it slightly easier for the person next to you and the one across the globe to resonate with that same possibility. The journey to the Far East, therefore, ends not in a remote valley, but right here, in the dawning recognition that the most important expedition is the one that turns our entire world into that valley. Part 9. The Sanctuary of the Ordinary. The final and perhaps most subtle teaching embedded within the chronicle is the sanctification of the ordinary. The masters did not live in a perpetual state of mystical trance, removed from the textures of earthly existence. They cooked meals, tended gardens, engaged in conversation, and enjoyed the simple majesty of a sunset. The difference was that for them, no moment was mundane, no action was merely functional. Each was infused with a sacred presence, performed with a full and loving attention that transformed duty into ritual and routine into meditation. This reveals the ultimate secret. The higher life is not an escape from the world, but a more profound and enchanted engagement with it. Your kitchen, your workplace, your daily commute, these are not obstacles to your spiritual life. They are your primary gymnasium. This is where the teachings cease to be a distant philosophy and become a tangible way of being. Washing a dish becomes an exercise in mindfulness, feeling the water, seeing the clarity restored to the glass, offering a simple act of care to your environment. A difficult conversation becomes a laboratory for practicing compassion and clear communication, for listening not just to words, but to the unspoken energies behind them. Even periods of waiting or boredom become fertile ground, opportunities to rest in the silent I am beneath the mind's restless chatter. The goal is not to add spiritual practices to your life, but to allow your entire life to become the practice. Every moment a conscious collaboration with the intelligent energy that flows through all things. Therefore, do not despair if your inner vision does not yet match the Master's vivid feats. The journey is gradual, a gentle unfolding. The initial signs are not materializations, but transformations in quality. A deepening patience where there was irritability, a spontaneous gratitude for simple things, a resilience in the face of old triggers, a quiet joy that is independent of external conditions. These are the true milestones, the evidence that a new consciousness is taking root. They signify that you are, step by step, downloading the operating system of the Masters into the hardware of your daily existence. You are learning to walk in two worlds simultaneously, fully engaged in the relative world of form, while anchored in the absolute world of your true nature. The account of the expedition, then, is not a standard to condemn our present state, but a compass to orient our becoming. It reassures us that the laws are real, the potential is genuine, and the path, though demanding, is open. The Masters are not gatekeepers, but guides, and their message is an eternal echo in the human soul. You are more than you have been taught. The boundaries you perceive are illusions agreed upon, and the power you seek is not outside, but sleeping within, waiting for the command of your own awakened will to stir. Your life, with all its complexity and simplicity, is the very journey. You are both the seeker and the destination, the student and, in potential, the master. The only remaining question is whether you will approach today as another day to endure or as the next sacred step in the greatest expedition of all, the journey back to the remembering of who and what you truly are. Part 10. The Eternal Return. And so the story completes its circle, not with an ending, but with a homecoming to the point of origin, which is your own conscious awareness here and now.
The expedition to the Far East was always an allegory for an inward trek, a map of the territory that lies waiting when we dare to turn our exploration from the horizons outside to the infinite landscape within. The masters are not historical artifacts. They are living symbols of a possibility etched into the very blueprint of the human spirit. Their existence whispers across time that the limitations we accept are a choice, and the freedom we crave is an inheritance. This knowledge is not a burden, but a profound liberation. It means you are not a victim of circumstance, but a participant in creation. The weight of the world lightens when you understand you are not here to carry it, but to understand your power to shape it, starting with the universe of your own being. Every choice for love over fear, for unity over separation, for constructive vision over cynical judgment is a vote cast for the world you wish to inhabit. You are not waiting for salvation, you are practicing it in real time with every thought you steward and every emotion you refine. Let this narrative be a catalyst, not a conclusion. Let it be the spark that ignites your own disciplined curiosity. The path is open, and it has been walked. The laws are immutable, and they have been demonstrated. What remains is the most personal and glorious of adventures, the application. Start where you are, breathe, and remember the I am. Look at your world and see the vibrating energy behind the form. Choose one thought today that aligns with your highest possibility. This is how the journey of 1,000 miles truly begins, not with a single step, but with a single conscious shift in perception. The mountains of the east fade into the distance, but their echo becomes the steady rhythm of a new resolve. The Master's Valley, that hidden realm of peace and power, was never a secret location on a map. It is a secret place in consciousness, and its gates open not with a physical key, but with a quiet, unwavering knowing. You carry the key within you. You have always carried it. The complete journey, therefore, does not lead you away from your life. It leads you, at last, into its breathtaking and sacred depth, revealing that you were, all along, the seeker of the mystery, and the mystery itself awakening.
And so, the path unfolds from legend into lived truth, from the pages of an old account into the silent chambers of your own awakening. The Masters have shown the map. The territory is your life. If this resonance of higher possibility has stirred something within you, a remembering, a curiosity, a quiet yes, then honor that signal. Please help our channel grow and spread this message by liking, subscribing, and turning on notifications. Your engagement is more than support. It is a communal vow, a shared frequency that helps guide other seekers to this light. Let your voice join the dialogue. Drop a comment below, sharing your insight or asking for our next step into the unknown. For the journey does not end here. It deepens. The real expedition begins not in the Himalayas, but in the very next thought you choose to master. Thank you for watching.